Now, where promises are made, promises are delivered, because we are going on to this next session, which is all focused on solutions for energy systems. So it's great to have you all here. Hi to all those of you that walked in during the session. My name is Haja, and I will be your moderator for these solution sessions this morning. And this one specifically will focus on the important role that off-grid and interconnected energy technologies play in reaching net zero. So in these next 40 minutes, we will dive deeper into that, because we know, for example, that renewables, right now, we find ourselves at, I think it's around 30% of electricity that is generated by there, and we know that in 2050, we could be, and we need to be around 80% of electricity generation being caused by renewables. So we have sort of a gap that we need to bridge. How do we do that? How do we invest more in off-grid and interconnected energy systems so that we can make sure that we get a cleaner and more reliable future, but also most particularly for regions that were previously underserved? There is a huge potential for off-grid energy there, and I think that is something important to dive into. Now, of course, I'm not just going to be speaking about that, because I have amazing experts with me for this session that will be giving talks. And I want to encourage everyone here to listen in. And please, if you have any questions for the speakers, write them down, because after each talk, I want to see if there are any questions here from the audience. So to all those people that have their phones with them, you better be writing down some notes when they are speaking, or else. Now, with that being said, I think we can hop right into the first speech, the first keynote, because it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Program Director and Principal Research Scholar at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Kevan Riahi. Welcome, welcome. The stage is all yours, I would say.
No, I lost my microphone. Great. Okay, so thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's really a big pleasure to be here today. So my name is Kevan Riahi. I would like to a little bit give you my own thinking about how to accelerate energy system transitions, and all of that in only 8 minutes. So I think all of us know that the energy system, we have a number of reasons why to transform it. And among others are the greenhouse gas emissions of the energy system, but also other environmental externalities and damages from the current system. And basically, if you think about how to transform it, there are two big perspectives of how we can decarbonize and in major way transform the current system. I would argue that for a very long time, our focus of the energy system was very much on large-scale supply-side changes. And those supply-side changes generally take a lot of time. They mean inertia in investing into big new infrastructures. And because of that, the paradigm has been that we have a lot of inertia in the energy system change. And because of that, we are overshooting our targets. And in the long term, if you look into many of those studies which focus on the supply side, they lead to a system where at some point we need actually to take even CO2 out of the atmosphere in order to bring back, after an overshoot, for example, temperatures back to 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees. I would argue that we would need, and there are many, many new studies who show that we can transform and accelerate system change by focusing on demand-side solutions, by focusing on granular technologies that can diffuse more quickly into the market, and create basically connected supply-side systems that communicate with each other and bring into that also digitalization. One of the reasons why demand-side solutions are so important is that if we move our focus from large-scale technologies to small-scale technologies, granular technologies, we know from historical experience and past that smaller-scale technologies learn faster, they diffuse faster into the market, they provide better access to services, and they mean also lower risk to the investors. So if you think about the solar PV project on your rooftop, you talk about investment risk you can't distribute the investment risk among many different people. If you need to build a nuclear power plant, you actually need a whole country who basically takes the risk of billions of investments that need to be made at once. If you think about innovation and why solar has made, why the solar costs have dropped so quickly, it's because for 1 gigawatt of production, you actually produce 100,000 of PV cells, and you basically repeat the same thing many times, and for the same output, you therefore also have quicker learning and faster innovation. So what we need at the end is a number of different disruptive end-use innovations. What they will have in common is that we move from a system which is basically focused on the demand side, on the ownership of individual appliances, to the usership, putting service quality into the center of the transformation, and to that also allowing better sharing of different appliances, and basically creating connected services which allow us to better integrate renewables, but which also allow us to limit energy use for the production of many of the appliances, since if we share them, we need also to produce less appliances at the end. And particularly what can help us here is the connection between digitalization and building the new service systems in a more connected way. This type of end-use innovations have, at the one hand, of course, the advantage that they help us to limit the size of the energy system, but at the same time, they create also many other co-benefits. So if you look into city-level studies, and where you have a system that helps you to share many of the different appliances, or in this case, many different cars, we know that we only need 2 to 3% of the current infrastructure and the vehicle fleet to provide a service, to provide basically mobility service with the same quality as the current one. And if we would move to such a system, we would basically reduce the passenger kilometers that we drive, we would reduce the emissions, but particularly we would also reduce congestions because we have much less cars on the streets. We would free up social space, we could green the cities, and we would also reduce pollution. So there are many, many co-benefits of a fundamental structural change at the demand side that we could harvest if we take basically services on the service level as an entry point to the transformation. So on aggregate, what we need to do is we need to move our thinking, in my view, from trying to improve technological efficiency. What you can see here on the left-hand side, it's important to improve efficiency of individual technologies, to new systems that allow us to converge many different services and provide them in a new way. So if you think about the mobile phone, a mobile phone has replaced many, many, many different devices. And because of that, actually the construction of all of those devices are not necessary anymore. So we reduce the energy needs by providing new digital services, by not having to produce all those other devices. And also the mobile phone, in providing all these different services, also requires much less energy than all of those other devices together. So we need to watch out for those different solutions. So many different benefits, potential benefits for digitalization, but we need at the same time also to watch out for important trade-offs. Digitalization can help us to improve equity by providing better access for the individuals, but if we monopolize data services, we can actually also create a lot of inequity by basically capital and information concentration in the hand of a few, which we need to avoid. Digitalization can help us to provide services that contribute to planetary services by enormously increasing energy efficiency of the system. But at the same time, digitalization can also jeopardize planetary services if it's used for creating a lot of new services, if it's basically used to more efficiently increasing the size of the current system. And we have to watch out how to manage that. And at the end, digitalization can help us with political agency, because through digitalization, people have more easy access to information. But you can use digitalization also to build own bubbles. Basically, you can disconnect people also much easily from information and reduce their political agency. And how to do that, I think, is one of the major challenges for the future. I'm already a little bit over, so let me jump over this side, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. I want to look to the audience right away. Is there a question for Mr. Riahi? If not, then I do have a couple of them. Okay, think about that for a little bit, because I actually wanted to get back to, I think it was like the second to last slide that you showed, where you said we should avoid trade-offs, ideally. On the one hand, yes, because I totally get that. On the other hand, we're going to have to deal with them either way, I think. I don't think we can always avoid them. And I think particularly when we, for example, look at sort of this transition that we need to make to renewables, and I think everyone here in the room would agree, right, that we can't do it fast enough. At the same time, there's also a sort of trade-off I recognized in energy access sort of developmental goals that we have on the one hand, and, well, a transition to renewable energy that we make. How would you sort of look at that trade-off between energy access and renewables, and how should we approach it?
I think that's one of the key questions. First, I would say we have to watch out not only for the trade-offs, but also for the synergies. So there are many energy access solutions which create synergies for managing also the climate system. So if you think about electrification of households or providing access to clean cooking and heating, very often this is about moving away from a solution where you have an open fireplace, right, which creates not only greenhouse gas emissions because of the degradation of the land and the fuel wood that is used, but also is the major cause of mortality at the moment. So the major cause of mortality, particularly for women and for children. If we move now to electricity, we increase the efficiency of the system by a factor of 6. Right. We reduce greenhouse gas emissions and we provide access at the same time. Not always trade-offs will be, we can avoid trade-offs, but very often, and I can be short, very often trade-offs are about are financial. And then those trade-offs can, of course, be managed by thinking about how to distribute the costs. It's not always the end user that needs to cover those costs. It's about progressive taxations, for example, or progressive carbon prices, and giving, thinking about a private carbon budget that we all have. And
I was going to say, because sorry to interrupt, but there's something fundamental in what you say. Usually the trade-off is financial, and that I think inherently then is a flaw in the system, right? Because you mentioned, well, if you take fire as a means, for example, you just sketched health effects. So we're talking about mortality, life and death. And in a way, that is something that is in the bigger sort of trade-off, and in a way in which we structure our economies, it's not valued. We value financial capital, so to say, and we don't do the same for health benefits, for social benefits, for environmental benefits in that sense. So I think there's something underlying there as well. Maybe one final question before I let you go. But I was curious, we're all here now in Vienna, but after tomorrow, everyone goes back to their work, everyone goes and tries to fight the good fight again. But a year from now, if we're looking at 2024, or if we're looking at the next COP for that matter, they were discussing it in the previous session, what would be the one thing that you would like to see? What should really happen and is urgent?
Yeah, so the one thing that, perhaps, I mean, obviously, having been involved in the climate negotiations since the last 30 years, I think we are missing our climate targets at the moment in a quite spectacular way. And we are in a system where countries are making pledges on these international negotiations of how much they reduce emissions. So if I have a wish, I would say I hope that countries will increase their pledges and try to take climate mitigation more seriously and are willing also to put this on the table of the international negotiations.
Yeah.
But what we need for that is, in my mind, we need to improve the trust and the fragmentation that we have at the moment, because that's the poison that we see in these international negotiations. And that's why things have gotten stuck since the Paris Agreement, because of the
lack of trust?
Lack of trust in across countries, but also lack of trust partly between policymaking and the scientists. And it was really nice to see the previous discussion and having seen Mr. Chernohovsky here, because I think Vienna is a very good example. What he has established here, that the city of Vienna, there are like-minded people at the political level. They bring in the scientists to find the solutions, and they create the institutions that are necessary.
Right.
Yeah? So we need that at the international level.
Absolutely. I like that. And I like how here, just on a stage, that was an example that you could pinpoint. Can we once more have a big round of applause for Mr. Riahi? Thank you so much for shedding light for that. And then, please do join back in the audience. I think that is a good basis for us to start this conversation on, because when we're talking about solutions for off-grid technology, then it is my honor to invite the next speaker, who will focus a little bit more on building a green energy infrastructure that will drive zero-carbon energy systems towards energy development and economic growth free of emissions, is what he's going to tell us more about. Please give a warm welcome to the Deputy Secretary General of GEIDCO. Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Lee Wousen, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much, Mr. Wousen. I would say the floor is all yours, and please take it away.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my honor to speak here at this forum. Nowadays, our world is facing global challenges such as climate change, environment pollution, and resource shortage. The root cause is the over-dependence of fossil fuels. To achieve sustainable development, one key word is clean. We have to find better solutions for energy production and usage. It means that we have to use clean generations as our main power supply and electricity as our main energy form. Today, the clean and low-carbon energy transition aimed at mitigating climate change is speeding up. Our overall solution is to build the global energy interconnection to realize green and low-carbon development. It can meet the demands for large-scale integration of clean energy, wide power allocation, and cost-efficient energy use. Now I will introduce some practices by GEIDCO and China in energy transition. First of all, we have scaled up various centralized and distributed renewables. Large-scale centralized wind, solar, and hydropower bases can be constructed in deserts in North China, as well as rivers of Southwest China. We have introduced the desert PV farms, not only generating solar power, but also providing home to plants. This is the model, what we call green energy plus eco-protection. Meanwhile, China is also advancing the distributed generation of clean energy based on the local conditions. For example, over 700 counties are promoting rooftop PV system, accounting for a total of 160 gigawatts. The second is to build a strong power grid that is interconnected and efficient. This can be achieved by enhancing power grids across regions to achieve large-scale allocation of resources. Now, 37 ultra-high voltage projects have been deployed in China, adding the interregional transmission capacity to 300 gigawatts, enabling the consumption of 130 gigawatts generated by 6 massive 10 million kilowatt hydropower clusters. And in parallel with developing water, wind, and solar power together. Thirdly, China is promoting smart energy use system. We have increased the use of electricity in the whole society, including transportation, industry, agriculture, buildings, and our daily lives. EVs, electric heating, and e-harbors are more and more common. Today, China's EV fleet is bigger than 16 million. The State Grid Corporation of China has established a smart EV platform connecting over 2 million charging poles. The fourth is to build a multi-energy and flexible energy storage system. Non-stable generation of renewable power poses higher requirements for power system adjustment. Thus, energy storage is a necessary choice. Right now, China is planning to construct a number of pumped storage power plants, with a total capacity of 120 gigawatts. Furthermore, for regions lacking both hydro resources and energy, GETCO invented a new model of pumped hydro storage to combine the function of water diversion and supply. Ladies and gentlemen, GETCO's mission is to build a win-win, open and sharing international energy platform. GEI has been listed in the UN High-Level Political Forum for 6 years. The GEI-based carbon-neutral solution has been written in the IPCC report. We hope to work with all parties to jointly build GEI, promote co-development of energy and climate. We firmly believe our works and vision will help the world to achieve energy transition and sustainable development. Together, we will create a beautiful future for all mankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bausen. You have to leave to a signing ceremony. Thanks for being with us, because we're running a little late. But I think that was a nice presentation with some very underground examples from China to see how those off-grid technologies play into practice. Now, moving on to our next speaker, she will give us an insight into how the nexus between energy and agriculture can be made and how we can reduce emissions in our agri-food sector. It brings me a great deal of joy to welcome to the stage. She is the CEO of AppTec Africa. Please give it up for Disha Parekh. Please, everyone. Welcome, Disha. I would say, again, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'd like to start today by introducing you to a man that you can see behind me on your screens. This is a farmer in rural Uganda that goes by the names of Mark Enoch Mbaga. Mark is one of the many, many farmers in the region that is having to deal with the effects of climate change on a daily basis, even though he has had nothing to do with the cause of the problem. If you have ever had the pleasure of visiting Uganda or any of the countries in the region, you can see them on the map, the green region in the center of Africa, you would know that we have been blessed with extremely fertile soils and a very healthy precipitation rate. However, in recent years, climate change has meant that rainfall patterns have become increasingly erratic and unpredictable. We are seeing regions of East Africa facing long periods of drought for the first time in history. This means that farmers like Mark can no longer rely on nature to just do its thing. So, of course, we had to step in to try to find a solution. And in came the Pay and Pump. The Pay and Pump is a mobile pushcart system that integrates solar PV modules with a surface water pump and remote monitoring system. And it can help farmers in East Africa carry water from a freshwater source nearby and irrigate up to 1 acre of farmland. Before we introduced the Pay and Pump, Mark was one of the many farmers in Uganda that was using traditional methods of irrigation. As we know, these traditional methods include extensive manual labor that involves usually the women and the children of the household moving kilometers to go to freshwater sources to fetch water in jerry cans. And even after all that labor, Mark was only seeing 2 harvest seasons, if that, per year, and these were of primarily drought-resistant crops. He was one of our first customers, and he was heavily involved in the piloting of the Pay and Pump project. Since its installation, Mark has seen an increase of 250% in his yields, and he is able to diversify the types of crops that he is growing, which means that his monthly revenue has gone up from about 2 million Uganda shillings to just under 5 million. That is over double. Mark has now been able to use the extra money and freed up time to send his children to school. He is now also employing 6 Ugandan women, including his wife, who are helping him to distribute his harvests to nearby customers and markets. Coupled with the technology itself, our pilots have given us a chance to be innovative with the payment models. We have found that most farmers in Uganda cannot afford the initial capital expenditure it would take to invest in a system like Pay and Pump. So we introduced 2 payment models, and the farmers have their choice as to what they pick. One of them is that they pay for water as a service, and the second one is that they pay a fixed rate monthly up until they have paid up the capital expenditure of the system itself, after which they would own the system. We have also added in recent years a remote monitoring unit to the Pay and Pump, which makes the pay-as-you-go model feasible. Every day, we continue to add improvements such as battery storages to the Pay and Pump system as we learn from the farmers what they need. In the last 2 days, we have had the pleasure of listening to many people showcase ideas and solutions of the many, many problems that the continent of Africa faces. And as with all of these solutions, ideas, and businesses, we hear time and time again that the biggest challenge that we are facing to growth and scalability is the access to finance. Yes, of course, access to affordable finance is an imperative factor. However, I would like to take that one step further and say that not only do we need affordable finance, we also need innovative finance models that include credit and debt models that match the solutions that African companies are making for their people. We also need to see a change in the attitudes and perceptions of financial investments in the African diaspora. There are companies on the ground, like Aptech Africa, who are implementing project after project and have an impeccable track record. And yet, we see on a daily basis that we are perceived as being extremely high-risk investments purely because of the continent that we choose to operate in. As African-owned and operated businesses, we must unapologetically and unequivocally call for financial institutions to see the African continent in a different light and allow African businesses a chance to scale and expand so that we can see a real impact on environmental, economic, and social factors. Thank you.
So much. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone? Thank you so much. Disha, you would like to call me by your first name, so I will. Thank you so much for that presentation. I just want to turn to the audience first. Is there anybody that has a question for Disha? Any burning questions? Oh, we have a hand over there. Yes, sir. I think if you walk up to the microphone in the middle, then you can ask your question and get a good stretch for your legs. Oh, no, there's a microphone there, if it's turned on. Does it work? Oh, if it doesn't work, maybe you can try the microphone in the middle. Over there in the hallway. We're building the suspense to the question. No pressure. I'm joking.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's not much of a question. It's just me expressing my gratitude for the great work, because I understand how it means to go from talking to action. And so these are things that we really need to change and build a sustainable and resilient future that we want. Thank you very much and well done. That's
Thank
it.
you.
much.
That is so kind. Thank you so much also for that kind comment. Yes, we can have a round of applause for kindness, everyone. Thank you. That is, I think that's a testament to you, Disha. Is there anyone that has a question for Disha as well? Otherwise, I have some. Then I will take this opportunity to allow myself to ask my questions. I was curious, Disha. I think one of the things that you mentioned, that you showed in particular, is how important, I think it's a common thing that is mentioned, right? Access to finance is like the recurring sort of thing that we always deal with. You mentioned some payment methods that you are working with, that you have, that are common practice for you guys to also make sure that farmers, people in agriculture can actually install these technologies, these water pumps, for example, that you showed. You mentioned pay as you go and all of that. What would be needed, would you say, to make the availability of those different payment methods more common practice?
So what we are seeing, I think, specifically in Africa is that I think Kian mentioned in his talk as well that the focus in renewables has traditionally been to do too much. And when we try to do too much on such a large scale, we get stuck because there isn't that the big ticket finance items are just not there.
Yeah.
But for projects like this, I think it's very doable because one of these systems that can, it can water an acre of farmland, but traditionally we are seeing that multiple farmers will get together and will buy it together so that one farmer uses it 2 days in a week and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
One of these systems costs approximately $3,000 to $4,000 USD,
Wow, okay.
which if we think about in this room is not a large amount of money. But for farmers like this, that is a big cost to put up front. However, if you split that across 2 years or 3 years, they are very easily able to put down a monthly payment, especially if it's 2 or 3 farmers working together.
So what do you think is blocking that from happening more often?
I think what we see is that financial institutions are not ready to trust that African people can pay their debts back. And essentially that's where it ends, right? That's where the conversation starts and ends.
Yeah.
We can do everything in our power to make these systems accessible to the people that need them. However, we are seeing time and time again that the conversations end because we are perceived as high-risk investments because we work in African countries, but it's traditionally not the case because we have a proven track record that is not the case. So I would suggest that instead of looking at the perception, we will look at what's actually on the ground and go by the data, and potentially that would help us to move over that hurdle.
Yeah, and base our decisions on that. It makes me think of the keynote speech that we had at the very beginning by Mr. Riahi. He also mentioned during the question segment that trust, well then between scientists and politics, but in the same manner, it's also trust in knowing that this is an investment that is there for the long run and is there to stay. Everyone, can I have a big round of applause once more for Disha, please? Thank you so much for shedding light on that for us, Disha. Thank you so much. Now, that already brings us at the end for the solution sessions on energy systems, but we are transitioning right away into the solution sessions for the built environment.